Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Rule the Waves 2 in our Let's Play Succession series that I'm doing with XTRG, Tortuga, and Benjamin Magnus. We're playing as Russia, we're playing on 4-year terms, so each player gets to play for 4 years, and we are in 1920. Now, I took over this campaign in January of 1920. We haven't made it very far from a timeline perspective so far, and that's because we've been at war my entire tenure until now. We were at war with the German Empire, we won a couple of dazzling victories against them, and we won a decisive victory in the war with them. As a result, this was the third Russo-German war, but for the first time we have taken considerable colonies from the Germans. We took Cameroon, which was a German colony in Western Africa. We have taken Kitsao Bay, which was a German colony in Asia. That's actually that's also very strategically placed, because now we can have a naval base here at Tsingtao, and then we also have the naval bases at Delaney and Port Arthur, so we can really kind of own this whole bay up here in China. Meanwhile, we've also taken a couple of other coaling destinations here in the Eastern Pacific. We've taken both the Caroline Islands and the Marshall, or Northern Mariana Islands. So in the event that we end up with war with the U.S., or that we end up wanting to sort of transfer our ships across the ocean, we now have bases in both Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, and then now we have bases in Western Africa. Still not a truly global spanning empire. We don't have bases in every region like the British Empire or something along those lines, but nonetheless, things are going reasonably well. Now, we just got out of war, which means we are massively in the red. We're not in debt. We have $142 million in the bank right now, which is quite a considerable sum. But we do have negative $4 million right now. We do have ships under construction that I don't intend to stop. We have 4 heavy cruiser of the Soreieski class. These were designed by Benjamin Magnus in his last reign. We are about a year away from 3 of the 4 completing, and then we have a 4th one that's about 2 years away. These things are pretty expensive, almost as expensive as a battle cruiser, $2.1 million per month to build, but they're pretty impressive craft. They have 12 8-inch guns and 3 quadruple turrets. They make 30 knots. They're 15,000 tons, 6 inches of belt armor. These things are true heavy cruisers in the sense of the word. Now, it'll be interesting to see how they play because no other country in the world is building heavy cruisers right now. We're the only ones. The battle cruiser has largely replaced the regular cruiser, but hey, they could be useful as commerce raiders or other things like that. Meanwhile, we're also in the process of researching a new battleship of our own, the THG class, which is 2 months away from completing its research. I'm kind of tempted. In 3 months, we get larger dock sizes. I'm tempted to do another research of another battleship and see if we can't get a slightly larger, more powerful ship. But we'll see. Meanwhile, we need to do a little bit of work to get our fleet back, our budget back into the black. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I did a little bit of research since the last video, and I did see that there are some countries that have backwards naval technology. So Japan has backward naval technology. Austria-Hungary has backward naval technology. Germany, Great Britain, France is behind. So Germany, Great Britain, and the USA are all very advanced in their technology. And so during the war, we initiated some espionage that's going on in various different countries. I'm going to cut back the espionage in Austria-Hungary. I'm going to cut it back in France, and I'm going to cut it back in Japan. That'll save us a bit of money, but it will also mean that we're not trying to spy on countries that have backwards navies. We are going to increase the research or espionage that's going on in England up to high. So we're going to be researching on the 3 advanced economies, Britain, Germany, and the U.S. They're also the only 3 economies that are still larger than Russia, because in our last war, not only did we take considerable colonial holdings, but we also got a bump to our base income because we didn't take all of the possible colonies, and that results in kind of war reparations, which is the kind of thing that can boost your base income. So by cutting the technology spying in 3 countries and bumping it in 1, that's a net benefit of 2, and you can see here that brings our negative balance down to negative 3.6. Now, here's the tough thing to do, guys. The Benjamin Magnus class has been around for a long time. They were rebuilt recently, but they're slow. They're actually too slow to be aircraft carriers. So we would have to rebuild them again to convert them to aircraft carriers, but we would also have to make them faster, which means we'd have to replace machinery, We'd have to pull off their turrets. We'd have to add more speed. It would be a very expensive overhaul to try and turn these into carriers. We also haven't researched fleet carriers yet. We've only researched light carriers. Light carriers can't displace more than 16,000 tons, and so these things displace 19,000. Long-winded way of saying there's really no feasible way to turn these into carriers until the fleet carriers come along. We don't know when that's going to happen. We know we have light carriers now. We haven't built one yet, but these Imperator Magnus ships are really worthless. And so we are going to have to scrap some of them. I'm not going to scrap all of them, but I am going to scrap the Imperator Nikolai I. This was a 1915 rebuild done by XTRG that made 24 knots. I can only assume the reason he made it 24 knots was the intent to eventually turn it into a carrier, but because of its larger engines, it's considerably more expensive to maintain at $461,000 per month. We're going to go ahead and scrap this ship, and you're going to see we're going to get $760,000 in the bank, and we're also going to cut a considerable amount of money from our deficit there. We are also going to go ahead and scrap the Poltava. Both the Imperator and the Poltava have a reasonable number of battle stars. I think the one we just scrapped had 4. This one has 5. But if we actually look at the Imperator Alexander, this one actually has 6 battle stars, and the Imperator Magnus has 6 battle stars as well. So these are the two more experienced and more historical ships. So we're gonna scrap the Poltava as well. And then we're going to maintain the Imperator Magnus and the Imperator Alexander II for at least a period of time. I don't know if it'll be short, but for a period of time as coastal defense ships. Now, the Imperator Magnus I is currently undergoing repairs. It will be undergoing repairs for 1 more month, and so I can't actually change its status to reserve fleet. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to mothball the Imperator Alexander II, and that will cut like 80% of its maintenance costs. We'll maintain it for one main reason. I'm maintaining these ships because in the event of a war, Russia's blockade modifier is something like 0.7, so it has to have a much larger fleet than the enemy to avoid being blockaded. These guys technically count as battleships, even if they're not really. They're pre-dreadnoughts. And as a result, keeping a couple of them to be cheap, rapid mobilization platforms that we can use to try and prevent a blockade makes some sense. Not enough sense to keep 4 of them, but we can keep 2 of them and they'll kind of act like coastal defense ships. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to mothball the Imperator Alexander II. You can see, again, our monthly budget is moving in the right direction. We're back down to negative 2.84 million, but we're going to go ahead and mothball that ship. Meanwhile, the Tortugov-class battleships, we're not going to mothball them, but we are going to send 2 of them into reserve status. That will cut their expenses, I think, by half. Yep. So they'll go into reserve status, and I think we'll leave 1 of them, the Tortugov, in active status. We're going to do the same thing to our battle cruisers. We're going to send 2 of them into reserve status, and we'll leave 1 of them in active status, just because I don't want the entire fleet to lose all of its training and experience and all of those. That's the current situation right now. At least for the moment, we're going to see what our budget looks like by switching some of these guys to reserve fleet. We'll switch one of the Imperator Magnuses to mothball. Okay, so we still have a couple of heavy cruisers on foreign stations. They're obsolete, and I do plan to scrap them, but I can't switch them over to reserve fleet while they're on foreign stations, I guess. So we're going to leave them as active, and then we're going to go ahead and switch this guy to active as well. But we can't reserve him either. So we're going to keep these heavy cruisers where they are for now. As soon as these new heavy cruisers of the Soreisky class come out, we're going to scrap them, however. We're not at war with anybody, Akula. We were at war with Germany, but that war has ended victoriously for us. Meanwhile, these 3 light cruisers of the Svetlana class, they were all rebuilt in 1901, but they are all also obsolete by this point. And so we are going to go ahead and scrap all 3 of these as well for $600,000, and that cuts our monthly budget a bit. Eltman, thank you very much for the follow. So that still leaves us in a good shape from a foreign station perspective, although obviously if we end up at war with Japan, we won't have as many light cruisers in Asia to kind of interdict their supplies. But for the moment, that leaves us okay, I think. So we've scrapped those obsolete ships. Now we have the Charcoal Cheetah class of destroyers. These guys make very good speed at 33 knots. They only have short range. They're not super old. They're only 8 years, so we're not going to scrap the Charcoal Cheetahs, but we are going to go ahead and transition them into the mothball fleet because I don't see any reason to keep 20 of these ships active, especially when they're still burning coal. And we have oil fire technology. We have much larger ships in the Magnu class. And so the Magnu class will kind of be our main fleet destroyer, or the Charcoal Cheetah is kind of our second line destroyers. We'll switch them over into mothballs as well. And you can see that we're rapidly coming up on a neutral budget at the moment, so that's a good sign. Looks like one of the Magnus is under repairs. We also have the Brynzinsk class of corvettes. Those are all going to go into reserve fleet. It doesn't really save us much money, but it saves us a little bit. And so we'll switch them over into reserve fleet. Meanwhile, the Magnu class, I guess we'll keep those destroyers active. I don't really know. I hate the idea of sending everything to reserve fleet, so I think we can probably get away with keeping those destroyers in active fleet. The Pallada class light cruisers, we're going to send 2 of these to Asia, so we're going to go ahead and move 2 of these to replace the 3 light cruisers that we withdrew out of Asia. We're going to move them into Northeast Asia where we've got multiple bases. So they're transiting there, and then we'll also go ahead and have 2 of them switched over into the reserve fleet, which gets us to a positive monthly balance. And again, I could be more ruthless about, actually, scrapping or doing other things with ships. But I also do like to roleplay this a little bit, and I think it would be highly unlikely that we would just scrap everything or what have you. So that's the situation right now. Our monthly balance is now positive. Now, one other thing we're going to do here, we are building 5 new submarines. The submarines were instrumental in allowing us to win the war. They didn't win the major battles, but they did really bleed the German economy dry, and it helped cause them to fall apart. With that being said, we have 18 destroyers that were all built in 1908 or 1909. Actually, 1909. The reliability is below 50%. These new destroyer or submarines are all above 50%. So we're going to go ahead and scrap these 16 obsolete coastal submarines, and that will also bring our monthly balance up to $377,000 into the black. And that's the situation right now. We're going to go ahead and advance into October, and then we are going to do one more thing and design a new ship. But we're going to wait until October to do that, when I can switch the Imperator Magnus over to reserve fleet and kind of proceed from there. So let's go ahead and jump forward to October. Okay, so Germany's refitting their Kolditz-class light cruisers with heavier guns. Austria-Hungary has scrapped their pre-dreadnought battleship the Titelhoff built in 1905. And a bunch of other intelligence is coming through. All right, so that's the situation right now. We now have an unrest level of 2. We have a negative monthly balance, again, of negative 204. I don't know what changed. The Imperator Magnus class is done, so we're going to go ahead and move them to mothball, or the Imperator Magnus itself to mothball. And just like that, our monthly balance is back in the black. And this is with a relatively small naval budget. You can see here tensions are very low across the board, and so that means budgets are low. We are continuing to research the maximum at 12% research. I'm going to do one thing here. I did notice that we're still having a high priority on naval guns. This may or may not be a good strategy, but we have naval guns of 16 inches at 0 quality, and we have naval guns of 18 inches at -1 quality. I prefer the 16 inches over the 18 inches. The 16 inches actually outperform the 18 inches in terms of belt armor penetration at 26,000 yards. They are slightly inferior in terms of deck armor penetration at that range. They don't have quite the same range as the 18 inches, which go out to 28,000 yards, but overall I prefer the 16 inches from a cost and efficiency perspective. With that being said, I'm thinking we're going to drop the naval gun research down to medium, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to increase the submarine technology research priority to medium as well, because we're way behind on submarine technology, and I really want to get that up more. Additionally, we probably should increase our subdivision of damage control from low to medium. That's very low at the moment, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to... I don't know. I think we're going to drop naval aviation airships from medium to low because we're going to be transitioning to a fixed-wing aircraft fleet. So we'll drop the airships to low, and then we've moved what was it? Was it damage control up to medium from low? I really feel like armor development should be more than low as well, but that's kind of the situation right now. So that's where we're at the moment. Now, I am going to design a new ship, I think. We've got these subs building. There's 7 more months on them. We've got a bunch more Magnus that'll be done in 6 more months, or not a bunch more, but we've got, 5 more Magnus that'll be done in 6 months. That'll give us a total of 41 destroyers between the charcoals. That gives us a vastly superior fleet to anything the enemy can throw at us in terms of light ships. Well, we're going to go ahead and design a new ship. We're going to go ahead and design even though we're already in the process of doing a design study on a battleship, we're going to go ahead and design a light carrier. This is my first aircraft carrier design, and that's what we're going to design. So I just did an auto design. You can see here the image of the carrier. 2 elevators, 1 fore, 1 aft, 2 funnels. I think that's all aesthetics. We'll leave it at medium range, oil fuel type. I think it designed an illegal ship. Don't carriers have to be at least 24 knots? I feel like they do. I'm going to design this to be 27 knots, primarily because, actually we'll say, 27 knots, because it'll keep up with the fastest ships in our fleet, should be able to keep its distance in the event it needs to run from the enemy. And I think more importantly, if we add torpedo bulges or anything like that after we redesign the ship, then we'll make sure that we're still making 24 plus knots in order to be able to effectively launch aircraft. The belt armor at 4 inches is overkill. It should never end up in battle. So we're going to drop the belt armor to 2. We'll leave the deck armor at 2, and then we'll have some armor for the hangar side, an inch of armor on the hangar side of the ship. 9,000 tons is way too small. We're going to make it larger, so we won't worry about that. Fire control seems kind of silly. I don't plan to have any gunfire with this ship. We've got tertiary guns of 3 inches. We're going to get rid of those entirely. We'll leave the 4 4-inch guns, I guess, but they're not really going to do anything. We're also going to go ahead and buff up the displacement a bit here. So let's get it up toward around 15,000 tons. Maximum for a light carrier is 16,000. So we'll get this guy up to 15,000 tons. Meanwhile, we're going to set the aircraft capacity to the maximum for a light carrier, which is 34 aircraft. So there you go. 34 aircraft with a flight deck. Doesn't have catapult technology yet. And if we update the ship graphic, you can see for whatever reason the flight deck doesn't expand with the rest of the ship. Lame. And that's the situation right now. So is this a legal design? It is. It is a legal design. It makes 27 knots. Its weight remaining is 589 tons. So that's a little bit high on capacity weight. Now, I apparently have not researched anti-aircraft guns because I can't add any anti-aircraft guns to the ship. But I'm going to leave a little bit of extra displacement in order to make sure that we can add anti-aircraft guns to this ship in time. With that being said, I wouldn't mind 28 knots. I don't know if 205 tons excess is enough to add much in the way of anti-aircraft guns, but I'm also going to trust that we could always reduce the torpedo protection as well. So we can do 1 torpedo protection. Honestly, we'll drop the belt to 1.5 and the deck to 1.5. This thing should never be in a gunfight, so we'll add torpedo protection to 1. We'll drop the deck and belt to 1.5 inches. The hangar side has an inch of armor, really just to prevent against splinter damage in the event of near misses or things like that, or maybe it'll help slow down a very light bomb. And I think that's what we're going to do here. We're going to build this carrier. It carries 34 aircraft, and it has 4 4-inch guns. Really, it's kind of a waste of space. No torpedo tubes, and no anti-aircraft guns at the moment. Torpedo protection hopefully will prevent against enemy submarines or torpedo bombers, and I think that's what our first carrier is going to look like. It's oil-fired, normal engine priority, 28 knots. I think that's a pretty good first carrier in the Russian fleet. And we'll go ahead and name it the Red October. Trying to think if there's anything else we need to do. No, I think that's it. All right, so we'll go ahead and design this ship, the Red October. No, I don't have dual purpose guns yet, P. Warner. It's going to cost us $3.2 million and take 2 months to research. That's fine. And so now we have 2 design studies underway. We've got the THG class battleship, and we've got the Red October class fleet carrier. The Krasny Oktober. I probably can rename it, right? Or maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, I know there's no Russian Revolution yet, but I'm still calling it Red October anyway. We'll call it foreshadowing. All right, so we're doing that. It's going to take 2 more months for that, so let's go ahead and move forward a little bit in time. Research breakthrough water wall furnace. I don't know what that means, but it saves weight on machinery. Our latest battleship, the THG, is ready for construction. Let's go rework the design a little bit. So here's the design of the ship that we just completed. The THG class battleship makes 25 knots. It displaces 37,000 tons. I want to displace more tonnage. I want to rework the design a little bit. So I'm wondering if I can wait a month. All right, new docks completed. If we move forward that 1 more month, our top spies managed to get a hold of blueprints for the new British ship, light cruiser Terskapor, currently under construction. A light cruiser with 5 6-inch guns, 4 3-inch guns, dual-purpose guns, too. 14 light AA guns, 30 mines, 4 above-water torpedo tubes, and it makes 30 knots. Counterintelligence believes that Austria-Hungary has stolen technology and hull construction from us. The affair has leaked to the press, and conservative newspapers are clamoring for actions. We should send a diplomatic note in the strongest possible language. All right. We're going to go to the build screen for the Krasny Oktober. Old Russian light aircraft carrier? Why does it say old? And we're going to build 2 of these things. So we'll go ahead and build 2. It's going to cost about $3.4 million to build 2. And we're going to get them underway right away. They should finish before my term runs out, and then we'll have them in service before too long. So you can see the 2 light carriers are being laid down. They both are displacing 15,000 tons. And so we actually have 6 ships displacing 15,000 tons, all currently under construction. Okay, so meanwhile, build ship, the THG class. How do you rework a design after you've already accepted it? Can you do that? Do we just load the THG class? Okay, so this is the THG class that we've already designed. I'm going to go ahead and bump the displacement up. It's going to be 40,000 tons. We're going to add a triple turret gun in the front of the ship. So it's going to have 9 16-inch guns. I think that's the main change we're going to make. Just adding a little bit of firepower, medium range, still 25 knots. I don't think we need to do anything else. I can't add anti-aircraft guns or anything like that. It's going to cost 40 months and $3.5 million to make. Oh my god. I'd like to increase the speed by 1 knot, but I can't. Unless I strip armor or something. What are the gun details on a 16-incher? Oh yeah, they're going to penetrate. Plunging fire could be disastrous on this thing. We could take 2 of the 6-inch guns off. Torpedo defense is 1. Turret top's 4.5. 14-inch, what is that? 14 inches protects us at anything outside of 17,000 yards from our own size shells. 1920. This goes till 1945, I think, technically. I guess we could change the engines a little bit to speed instead of reliability. But then they're probably just going to break down. Maybe it's 1955 charcoal. Not sure. Okay. Actually, here's an interesting question. Is 9 triple turrets better from a weight perspective? That's 2, 4... forward, center... Oh, wait. Where's the super firing? X turret, aft superimposed. Where's the forward superimposed? Oh, I already have the forward superimposed. And then aft centerline? Is that what we want? Oh, no. Aft. Oh, I don't have forward. That's what I don't. So if we... So actually... So 8 16-inch guns and double turrets is lighter than 9 16-inch guns and triple turrets. It's also a little bit less vulnerable because it won't get destroyed by enemy gunfire quite as easily. Because if you take a turret out, you only take 2 guns out instead of 3. So I think this is going to be our design. 8 16-inch guns and double turrets, 40,000 tons of weight, a little bit of extra weight for anti-aircraft guns when they do become available. Engine priority normal, it makes 26 knots. So we get a rate of fire penalty of 20% for having these guys in single turrets. What if we move them to doubles? It's still, wait, 20%. 20%. I kind of like the idea of having them in double turrets. Just because it will give us a little bit more... Actually, the weight savings are less? Or no, it's because I increased the number of guns. So we have 16 instead of 14. 16 gives us 8 on each, or 8 gives us 4 on each side, though. So we'll do this. Well, this is going to be our design. So we'll redesign the THG class. I just wasted $8 million. I redesigned the same class, apparently, and now I have to redo the design, which is annoying. But oh well. I'm not always the most efficient player. We're negative 3.2 million. 4 more turns, however, and then some of these destroyers start coming online. The Lockwood Company has developed a torpedo bomber as a private venture. They want to know if we're interested in buying it. I don't know what a good speed or anything like that for a torpedo bomber is, but yeah. Meanwhile, aircraft types. So we now have a torpedo bomber. It's carrier capable. We don't know anything about its reliability. It's not obsolete. Meanwhile, I am also going to request proposal for a new fighter aircraft. We're going to go with speed and maneuverability as its priorities. We'll see what comes of it. Subdivision and diesel generators. A new French torpedo bomber called the Loire 52 is entering service. It is rumored to be faster than our fastest torpedo bomber. Okay. All right, so... Aircraft types. Fighter request in progress, 5 more months. Additionally, I do think we want a dive bomber. Oh, I can't request another proposal? Huh. Can we buy foreign aircraft? We can buy a license to foreign aircraft. Interesting. Nobody has dive bombers yet. There are a few torpedo bombers out there. That's kind of cool that you can buy foreign designs. All right, so we're going to go a couple more turns. We've commissioned some submarines, as well as 3 destroyers. Our top spies managed to get a hold of data for the French torpedo bomber Newport ND-48B. Torpedo bomber Newport ND-48B, top speed 102, combat radius 180 nautical miles. Our scientists have made unexpected advances in anti-submarine warfare technology. Early hydrophones. New area discovered. Our scientists expect promising results from the new research area anti-aircraft artillery. All right, so we're going to go to the build screen. The THG class. We're going to build 2 of these monsters. Now, I'm massively in debt. I'm building 2 THG class battleships. These are our super battleships. 16-inch guns, 8 of them. They make 26 knots. And we are currently also building 2 light carriers of the Krasny Oktober class, or the Red October class. They're about 21 months away. Meanwhile, our heavy cruisers will be coming off the line soon, and that will free up a considerable amount of budget for us. The game does do refits, Alley Cat. All right, so that is the situation. Now, I don't have a lot of... I've got 111 million in the bank, but I'm burning through almost 10 million a turn. And we do have anti-aircraft technology now, I believe it is. Where is it? Anti-aircraft artillery, medium research. I think we just keep that as is. I don't think I actually have any technology or artillery researched yet. But we're just going to kind of keep progressing here a little bit. An anti-British rebellion has broken out in Ireland. Oh no, poor Irish or British or whatever. All right, so those submarines are all commissioned into the Navy now. 58% reliability on the new ones. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of Rule the Waves 2 in our Succession series with XTRG, Benjamin Magnus, and Tortuga Power. This is our first turn at peace in this round. We've blitzed through about a year of action here. We've designed a light carrier, our first carriers. We're building 2. We've designed a new super battleship, and we are building 2. Our finances are in the red, but we've got a healthy surplus in the bank to kind of help alleviate that financial pressure, and that's where we're leaving things off with tensions relatively low across the world. We'll pick this up next time in our next episode to conclude our run-through of the Succession series of Rule the Waves 2 before we move it on to the next player. But with that being said, I hope you guys are enjoying. As always, please let me know your thoughts down below, and until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.